Welcome to Soltron. This is the video review for Metal Cardbot S Sky Gallop. Here's a look at the box that she came in. So you get some really great CGI models of her. Probably poses she can't really even pull off, but she looks very cool. And then you get, of course, the instructions, which are on a nice glossy print. And here's a size comparison with the other metal Cardbots. You can see she's smaller than the biggest ones, but bigger than the most basic one. So she's somewhere in that middle size class. And here she is with a couple of those other planes that I have that are similar to her style. And then with another Centaur and Transformers, you can see she's well above the leader class size. So here's a 360 view of this figure. You can see that she carries off the proportions really well. The additional back legs blend pretty nicely into the body, and the wings help bulk her out. I think it's kind of an unfortunate thing is that when you look at her from the front, she just looks like a normal robot. You don't really see or get a sense of the back legs at all. It probably would have helped if like the legs could spread apart or the hips like got wider or something, just to give some indication that something else is going on. Because but from every other angle you get the centaur vibe, so I think she carries that off very nicely. Yeah, I'm really excited about this look. This was one of the metal Cardbots that I was most excited about. When I think you compare the two, you can see that these legs are like just much more bow-legged, which I think somehow communicates that it's more of a centaur looking robot, whereas this figure still has the nice humanoid aesthetic, so you don't quite get that sense. And then we get a close look at this head sculpt. You can see she's got very nicely detailed eyes. The metallic green is very beautiful looking. It looks actually translucent, so pretty nicely painted. And then you get these little wing effects on the side of the head, and you get this night visor on top. So very unique style head again, even though it is just a visor face again, like most of these figures are. And then she does come with her metal card, which has some very excellent artwork of her preparing an arrow, and then a cool little crown-like crest on the back. And then her weapon is like the tail fin of her plane mode. It does communicate a bow kind of aesthetic, so that's very cool. You get the kind of Sagittarius look to it, and you could kind of pretend that she has like an arrow in her hand. It would be nice if she would have came with an arrow to communicate that better, but it's kind of hard for her to like put it across her chest in any way. You do get this articulation, which could kind of help, but you don't get a butterfly joint, so you can't really get her drawing an arrow per se. So that's kind of a disappointing thing, is the articulation kind of limits your bow pulling poses. So there's not a lot you can do there, and you can do a cool thing with this, with the weapon, where you just fold it in half and it basically becomes a sword. So that's kind of a nice touch that you could do both of that. But that's basically now turned into like a tail fin of a plane. You can see very clearly that's all there is to it. A weird thing is that this handle does have a notch in it, and that does make it so you cannot put it in the other hand. The other hand does have a tab, but it's not faced correctly. It only fits with this hand. So kind of an odd choice. They could have just not put the notch there and just let it slide into both hands, but that's not possible. So very fitting accessory. Definitely helps carry off that centaur vibe. And her other accessory, of course, is these rear legs, which resemble horse legs very nicely. They can get a nice backward kicking motion. They can get like entirely spread. You can click down the tail if you wanted to for some reason, but that's all the articulation you're going to get there. So yeah, again, just really beautiful aesthetics on this. Just the black and white and gold effects are very cool. And then she does have the nice ball joint necks that these figures have now. 360 on the shoulder, pretty typical. You do have bicep swivel, which is nice. You do have more than 90 on the elbow, which is also great. You got full outward motion, including this joint, so no limit on the shoulder except for no butterfly joints. And then you do not have waist swivel with this figure. It's kind of because the wings are pinned here. They probably could have worked it in, and it would have been nice for her to be able to swivel around. You do get these universal joints in the hips, so you do get almost a full spread there. You can get a full kick up. The wheels kind of get in the way a little bit, but it's not too bad. You're going to get everything hindered by this back here, so you're not going to get any backward kick. And then you get a weird thing where the knee is here and it's kind of here, so you get kind of a double knee. You get this knee, and then you get a second knee here, which kind of fits the horse theme a little bit. You can get kind of a pawing, like kind of look to her. And then you don't have any ankle tilts. You do have a rotation here for transformation, but it's not very useful. So you can get some cool poses where it looks like she's galloping through the sky. You can rotate these VTOL wings just to give the impression that she's in flight and shooting laser arrows down at her prey. So that's pretty cool. She's just sailing down, firing those arrows. So not too bad. I think the lack of a waist joint is a disappointment though, because it would make her feel a lot more dynamic, and they probably could have worked that in. You can kind of get a galloping pose, but unfortunately she just can't stand up with the 3 legs. Actually, maybe if I spread the horse legs further. Yeah, it's still, she's just too off balance. She actually needs all 4 feet on the ground, unfortunately. And then you can get kind of a kicking pose. But yeah, very interesting figure. I think she looks mostly great from all angles. And then to convert into her more basic mode, you just pull off this whole section here. It's just clipped in with these 2 clips on the back of her butt plate here, and then it's got kind of these little guides right there to help line everything up. But you can see when the back is off, it's much clearer how much kibble is on her back. It's just really messily thrown on there. And then these things next to her legs don't look great either, and you can't really articulate them up. It'd be nice if in Centaur mode maybe these rotated all the way up and made her front legs look skinnier. But yeah, she just looks the same in both modes. I guess a thing you can do is you can try to have another figure ride on her. So you can flatten out the wings, and this gives you like a good amount of saddle space, but then all of this back kibble gets in the way. You have to kind of like lift this up towards her head, and maybe even further than that. And you can kind of get a good spot for Blue Cop to get in like the saddle area. So it's a possibility. It's awkward, but not too bad. I think it works. All right, and for the horse legs, the transformation is very simple. You're just going to fold up the tail all the way. You fold up the legs, and then you fold them at their knee joint, which they also have. I guess I forgot to mention they can do that. That's not super useful. But there you go. You get a huge block. It's not super interesting. And then you can just tab on the card to the front. So again, just a huge piece of luggage, huge suitcase. And then we have our basic night mode which is a very cool figure. I think it is kind of annoying she has some plain parts pegged on. It'd be nice if these hip skirts were maybe longer, if that meant that there'd be less of this or something. Um, I think the ugliest part is probably the back of her arms is all of this, which is not a good look at all. But I think she carries everything pretty well. Her back kibble is enormous, especially because these giant wings. But I think the figure, it kind of suits the figure in a way. You get kind of a really quick looking knight kind of look out of her. The sword is a little bit meh, but what are you going to do with what you got? So I think it actually uses the wings and the sword, or the tail fin, kind of nicely to give this interesting looking warrior. It's not too bad. You could fold, I guess, the wings down to try to just preserve some space a little bit in some way. I think that maybe makes her look a little more streamlined. Maybe this could be like just her base mode when she's not powered up. But yeah, you're not gonna, these wings do unfortunately not fold up in a dynamic way. They're just kind of in the way. But yeah, I still really like the look of this figure. So to get her into her airplane mode is very easy. She's very back heavy now. You're just going to go ahead and get the tail piece ready. So that's going to be a separate piece. And then you open up her chest. You're just going to rotate the head down. This can be a little bit stiff the first couple times. And then you just rotate the arms up. And you can see that's already taking the form of the cockpit of the plane. And we're just going to sandwich those together. And then we get this huge chunk of backpack. And we're going to fold that forward. So we're already getting the front of the jet. And I already had the wings oriented the right way, so that's easy. And then you're just going to fold up these hip skirts. And then you do have to rotate the thighs around. And then point up the toes. Oh yeah, and there is kind of a slightly annoying thing is you have to get these kibble parts. You have to untab those from the legs. So this is actually a little bit more complicated than most of the metal Cardbot figures, I think. And then you're just going to take the naked legs here and just fold it up into this cavity back here. And that is your jet mode. So she is slightly more complicated, but not by very much. And then you're going to take, of course, this whole section. And there's a huge gap back here. And you're just going to slide that in there. And then you get your very nicely detailed jumbo jet with green metallic eyes, the VTOL turbines. So very cool looking jet. Not too bad on the underside. You do have this giant chest plate and hip skirts, so it's not very clean, but that's okay. And then you get these landing gear engaged right here, and that just goes with these hip landing gears. And you get a very giant jet. And then here she is with Starscream, so you can see the size comparison is just, there is no comparison. Actually, I guess that scales pretty well considering a fighter jet against a jumbo jet. And then she's even bigger than the Tobot jumbo jet Airhide. She's got a bigger wingspan, bigger fuselage, so she's actually bigger than Airhide even. And she's about the same size as this Chinese AWACS, which was LDCX. She's got the same wingspan, fuselage size, just she's to that same scale. This was about $66 on Gmarket after shipping. I highly recommend it. Really pleased with this. I'll put the link in the description. The quality is maybe like one tiny step down from Blue Cop. She feels like a little bit not as good, but it still feels like a great figure in hand. So I'll see you in the next one.